Oh, hello! Oh my goodness, I didn't even see you come in. This is your host, Bryan Betz. This is Faith Love Breakfast. I'm sitting here with Pastor Eric Seepin and Pastor Andy Littleton. We are deliciously enjoying some... We are not deliciously. But our food is delicious from XO Coffee that we record at. We have a white cappuccino with Eric, and we have a Whiskey Town biscuit without the ham. But how is that?
Green chili. It's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks to the folks in the kitchen. It's delicious. XO Coffee's good. If you live in Tucson, you should go. If you live in Japan,
Still go.
Come on down.
You have no excuses.
Yeah. Buy a plane ticket.
Buy a plane ticket.
Yeah.
We'd love to see you.
I don't know what the cost of a plane ticket to Tucson from Japan is, but I'll ask people in our church who travel there on a regular basis.
Yeah. Man. I'll ask people in our church that don't ever travel there.
Yeah. I just happen to have one person in my church who goes there once a year at least.
And being the token millennial, I will ask Google.
You ask Google.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want friends.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask Siri. That means I'm older.
So,
Siri doesn't work, by the way. Anybody aware of that in the world?
what?
Siri just doesn't work.
She's broken.
Mm-hmm.
She broke?
She broke
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Wait, how so?
I don't know. It just doesn't work well.
She doesn't listen. She doesn't understand. She's got no concept.
Yeah. You end up more... Speaking of our anger episode, if you're like driving around asking Siri stuff, you might get angry. Yeah, it's possible.
So what kind of things do you ask Siri?
Nothing.
Well, sometimes I try to dictate to Siri for my text messages, and Siri doesn't understand anything I say, which could be my problem, but I'm not doing it.
So you said nothing. You don't ask Siri anything.
I don't.
And you've come to this conclusion that she's not functional.
And my wife is always like trying to stick with Siri, like believe in it.
Oh, so it's based on your wife's experiences, not your own?
No, I've tried it, but we'll be driving, and I'll say, "Oh, hey, where you find us a gas station?" And inevitably, ding, Siri,
Yeah.
and it doesn't. It's not effective. It would be much easier to go into your map and just put gas. That's what I found. I don't know. Every time, like, my wife's given Siri a chance, I just kind of go, no, well, here we go.
I have British Mail Siri, and every
British
time
Mail Siri.
Yep, I
Is
don't.
the name still Siri?
Yes, it is.
Sure.
And I'll be like, "Hey Siri, please set timer for 15 minutes for my chicken, my honey battered buffalo chicken, toasted buffalo." And
You give it all that detail?
yep. And he's like, "Yep, 15 minutes. There you go," but in a very attractive voice. It's really helpful.
Maybe you could talk to my Siri right now. Would you tell it something?
Hey Siri, please set timer for 15 minutes.
On my honey battered triple glazed chicken?
It did. It set the timer and it's going. Like, I think he's got the millennial voice.
That's what it is.
Please set timer for 15 minutes. No.
Hey, please.
No. So we have today.
This is money podcasting right here.
Yeah.
We have a Q&A today, and we have asked you multiple times to send us your questions, anything you would like to know. From,
All 88 of you.
Yes, all 88 of you. Some of you more have asked, for those that like the page but don't listen, because there are those.
Yeah. Like Siri.
Yes.
Doesn't listen. Yeah.
To send us a Facebook message, Facebook comment, ask us a question on Gmail.
And the only question we got was, what's the deal with Bryan and when is his show going to air?
Yeah, I was asked, we want to hear more about Bryan. Does he have his own episode talking about him?
Wow, crazy.
And so I'm gonna
Who asked
say
that question?
I was wondering, Andy, who asked that question?
One of our Japanese
who's-
listeners from what I saw.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Can you
whose
read
name was on it?
What's your email, Andy?
Oh, I have so many.
Oh,
Personal.
so
It came from personal Gmail.
oh, yes, Andy's personal because it was your face.
But who signed it?
Yeah. So,
Anyway.
I'm going to answer that question. That's the first question. And that episode will never air. We do plan to do an episode asking me questions before I am no longer part of this show, which will be...
We may air clips of that every so often.
Like 45-minute clips.
to make Yasuki happy.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm just going on the record right now.
I have a question for our listeners in Japan. Is that even a legitimate... Is there any legitimacy to that name? Probably not. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
So, but I still have questions for you guys.
But I did notice on Facebook that Justine, one of our faithful listeners, wanted us to finish the Cactus song, the Cactus Worship song.
I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah, a song representing Arizona and its relationship to God.
No, she just wanted a song about cactus.
Oh, probably.
We could do another, two-song called Potholes. Yeah.
There are plenty. Right in my apartment, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Inside your apartment, you have
Inside my apartment.
Inside. Are there holes in your pots?
Yes. And I'm really proud of you. I really am. I'm a pun guy. I'm that kind of joke guy.
Uh-huh.
I make all the worst ones. And one day you'll be on my level. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Okay.
Well, see, my daughter does that. And she does so many of them that we decided we'd create a rating system for them. So when she'll make a pun, we're like, that's like swap meet level. Like, I could have bought it at a swap meet. Sometimes we're like, that's like, street level. I bought that in an alley. Like, that was not a good pun. So that's it.
Is swap meet good, then?
Swap meet's pretty, it's just like, it's pedestrian.
Yeah. I love swap meets. I'm feeling really offended.
All right, you can buy 10 puns for $1. It's
that's why I like the swap.
You're not buying this a guess.
Okay.
What is your favorite joke that you've ever heard?
I don't remember jokes, so...
I don't either.
Okay. How about puns? What's your favorite pun that you have ever made, Andy? Because I know you're a fun guy. Sorry, fun guy. Fun guy. That was my bad.
Yeah.
First one.
Yeah.
That was terrible. I'm sorry.
I don't know, man. I'm sorry.
Okay, so here's one that I liked that I heard recently, and then it took me a second to catch, and you'll have to understand the whole story. We had a Bible study, and I asked some of the guys in the Bible study, hey, would it be okay if this particular person came in? And one of the guys said, well, you'll just invite any old guy in, won't you? And I'm like, no. Well, the guy's name is Guy. And so I was like...
Is he old?
Yeah. Exactly. He's older.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, man, really? So, yeah. That was kind of funny. It was a pun. That was good. Yeah. And now, and I also know his daughter-in-law's going to be listening, so, hey.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
That's good. I love puns, and a lot of my different names, like my Wi-Fi names, are both puns.
Oh, yeah.
So there's one for like 5G and 2.4G and whatever that means. I don't know.
Folks, if you're looking for free Wi-Fi,
it's not going to be at my place.
Oh, okay.
It's not free, unfortunately. But if you ask for it, well, it's essentially
it's not free to Brian, but it could be free to you if you have this password.
Yeah, you just need to ask nicely, really, and be in my proximity. So, Arthur, any more donuts?
Oh, yeah.
And Woodrow, but don't have a paddle.
Yeah. So
those are two
very
popular ones.
Yeah, the one at my house is Charlotte's Web.
Yeah, well, you got a picture of me.
Oh, yeah. Hey, viewers, we're photographing right now.
We take very few photos. In fact, we videoed an entire podcast and never turned the video on. So.
I wish that I have no idea what I look like, and you probably want to delete that. It probably look terrible.
Well, one issue we'll just have to kind of process through you just enjoying who you are, but that's
one of the questions was like, when are you guys going to finally, as pastors, dig into this, thing where Brian doesn't like the sound of his voice or how he looks, and
I was
comfort
making
him, console him.
That was fun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I know.
So what are these? You said you had some questions for us. What are these questions that you have for us?
Yeah, we've blown a whole 9.5 minutes.
I know.
What time do you have to leave in?
I don't know.
Usually when I'm doing
30 minutes from now.
Yeah. When I sit down with people, I'm very conscious of the time, as you can tell in our hour-long podcast.
Yeah. I'm usually not. People are usually inching toward the door when I'm with them. It's weird.
We'll need to talk about your self-deprecating humor and how much that's internalized. No.
Yeah, you don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, no.
It's no good.
Yeah. But I was curious. I have quite a few just random questions.
Okay, go for it.
Ask.
Are these from email, or are these just
No,
questions?
we did not
you-
receive any emails from anybody.
So you just wanted to ask us.
I
this
just
is
have a bunch of
staged.
random questions. Yeah.
This whole thing.
These are questions from the host.
Yeah.
He wants to dominate finally.
Yeah, exactly. It's about my time. No, they're just a bunch of random ones, okay? So there's no rhyme or reason. What can technology never replace for you?
What can
Technology never replace.
never replace?
My wife.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's probably where I'm going to start. Because, yeah.
Your wife, awesome. Perfect.
Yeah.
What does happiness smell and or taste like?
Cake.
A really good street taco.
Street taco.
I love a good street taco.
What's your favorite
Can you
place to get
can
a
you
taco?
define for me the difference between a taco and a street taco?
Well, the way
good
I
stuff.
see it is, one, a street taco has to be purchased on a street.
But they always aren't.
No, they're not.
There are
So
all
they're
kinds of
s-
restaurants
They're
that
smaller.
offer. Yeah.
They tend to have a charred meat on it.
Okay.
Or some kind of artistic, thing with vegetables.
Because it's rough out there on the streets.
Yeah, well, it's sort
charred.
of it's charred, and then you get just the onions and the cilantro.
Okay.
And nothing else.
Yeah.
So if you go to street tacos downtown, they're going to ask you, do you want it one way or another?
You're not getting any lettuce on there.
No lettuce. You're not getting
Yeah.
It's not going to have ground beef.
Yeah. Yeah, for those folks who are going to travel here from Japan and visit, if you go somewhere and you think you're going to get a meal and you're going to order one street taco, no, that's
No,
like
there's a
2
reason
bites.
they're
2 bites.
$1.50.
Yeah, you got to get about 20 of them.
3 will do.
3.
If they have chips.
Yes.
And a little side of beans that you can sprinkle on.
Yes.
So what's your favorite place to get street tacos?
That place titled Street Tacos.
Okay, so it's called
your-
Street Tacos. That's the location.
There is a
of the
place
business.
called Street Tacos.
Downtown. And I like that. Any of the places you see by the side of the road will give you a good street taco.
But what I've noticed is the real ones don't call them street tacos.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're right.
So what's your favorite kind of cake?
Chocolate.
Chocolate?
Yeah. I'm going to give you only one-word answers.
No, that's okay. So what is there a location or a place or a person that you prefer their cakes over anybody else's?
No. I just seriously, yeah. Like if there were cake in my home, I would just eat it and eat it. So it's kind of I banned it from our home. I really like cake, like sweets in general, but cake is a favorite. So I mean, there's certain cakes like, and my sister-in-law makes this chocolate cake that was in our house recently, and it's super good. It's from a cookbook. It's not like. I mean, I don't know. She found it somewhere, but it's great.
But she had to construct it.
Yeah, Maria, thanks. It's awesome. It's so good. But then we've made cakes at home that were super good. I had some.
Awesome. And there's no right or wrong answer. We're not going to judge you.
Oh, phew, man.
But we don't want to lose listeners. Just
Yeah. So be very considerate.
Yeah.
Next time.
I
don't know if that
love
was
all.
adequate, but we'll think about it.
I
and
love
get back to you.
all cake.
Okay, there you go. Awesome. He
Yeah.
loves all cake.
Yeah.
So my next question, in terms of either maybe worship or preparing for a sermon, or even meeting someone for counseling, what are things that might hinder you from really being in a place where you are, I don't want to say comfortable, but at peace with what you're doing, or just like really able to give God fully your attention?
Well,
That list is long.
I'm like, wow.
What comes up more often?
We can
than
start with
others?
indigestion and
Yeah.
move on down the line.
That's a good answer too.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, when you're saying, so you're saying worship in the sense of as I sit and I'm listening to what's going on in my community and I'm communing with God and
exactly.
on a Sunday. You're
Exactly.
talking about that particular part. Okay.
Yeah.
In that context.
I think the hard part, in different contexts, it's different, but I think the overarching thing is if I am worried about how I appear, or if I am not okay with who I am in Jesus, then I'm really attempting to get people to like me or afraid that they're going to reject me. That's the thing that's the biggest hindrance to me, is making it about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I tend to do most of the time.
Yeah.
Like, I trip over me. Heck, I listen to these podcasts and think, oh, man.
What do people think of me?
Yeah, what do people think?
How many people are
wow,
listening?
I'm tripping over me.
Oh.
You know, like
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that is, I mean, there's that for me too, and I'm sure that's so common in our circles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got all these hang-ups, and, you know, there's an old episode, Andy's Problems. I talked about like 2 of those, you know, there's way more. But one of my big things is feeling like I am like I have to solve things for people. And it's not just people making me feel that way. Like I kind of project that I would have the answers to things, but inwardly, like I get very overwhelmed by the feeling that I have to solve people's problems. And, you know, that doesn't mean I shouldn't engage and deal with that stuff, but I feel that. So like a Sunday where I'll struggle to worship or preach or something like that would be one often when there's been some form of like needing to solve problems leading up into that. I'll be that'll make me tense. And then feeling inadequate, like, so you mentioned like counseling or reaching, like if I'm going into a sermon, which often turn out to be really good because I'm not going in there self-confident, you know, which is usually a good thing. But if I'm feeling like whatever I'm dealing with, like I'm inadequate for this, like that'll be a real internal struggle. But often it's hopeful that I have to deal with that because I'm not adequate, you know, in and of myself. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any emotions that you're afraid of? Or emotions?
What do you mean by emotions? Like
in others or in ourselves?
In ourselves.
Okay.
In yourselves. Or it could be that you're used to.
Like that I used to be afraid of, or
yes. Like I used to be afraid of anger.
okay.
What?
And by the way, like we talked about, I want to make a confession. We talked about anger last week, and I really enjoyed it. And I just realized how often I just get angry, and like a lot of times, thankfully, it's not hard for me if I'm angry at someone. It's not long until like I'm not angry at them. It's a very short period. A lot of times, it's my forgetfulness. So if someone wrongs me or whatever. And the next day, they're like, "Hey, I'm sorry, but like, what? Don't worry about it, man. Don't even worry about it." But in that moment, I'm just like furious. But I wanted to confess that like it happens more often than I recognize.
Oh wow!
Series timer
Siri gave
just
us the
got
timer.
Bam! That was 15 minutes. Awesome.
And
We're making good
that's
time.
actually the train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
that was the new.
So what was your point?
Yeah, I was. I
That was
wasn't
the train.
listening.
Oh, I just.
It's
wanted,
just because of the soundbite. I'm not
exactly. No worries. It was really inspirational. I wish you caught it, but the timer interrupted. And there's
The
a train.
train really
I don't think
is
it's
here.
going to be able to catch it, but it's a good mic.
Oh yeah,
there it is.
It's
gonna
gonna
catch
catch it.
Yep. More inspirational stuff.
That's a weird sounding train.
Yeah.
It's about to run someone over.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fortunate.
Didum.
Our podcast just got morbid, everybody.
But yeah, emotions that you're afraid of or used to be afraid of.
In ourselves.
Yes.
In ourselves. Okay, this isn't an emotion, but one thing I am afraid of, I'm afraid of speaking up about things, and I do it. I'm known for giving my opinion and stuff like that, but I've definitely done a really bad job of it at certain points in my life. So I've noticed that I'll tend to not kind of be brave when I should be, and sometimes I'll be brave when I shouldn't be, and I worry about it these days in my 30s now that I'm starting to kind of see some of that, and I get kind of worried about which situations I should speak into and which ones I shouldn't because I've made mistakes. So that's not so much the emotion, but worry's emotion, but I don't know.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. Like,
Yeah.
there's no right or wrong answer. Like,
Yeah.
one of my next questions was probably going to be like, what is something about yourself that's maybe not morally wrong by any means, but something that you're not a big fan of yourself?
Well, there's plenty morally wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of moral.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I don't know if I want to broadcast that to all my idiot listeners.
Yeah.
No,
Like,
that's why I
morally
was saying
wrong
like
things about me.
Oh, look at that vanity.
sometimes
I would say, like, well, do you say emotion? It's interesting. I would maybe answer the question more of what I'm afraid in other people. Is that I am afraid of anger, like a vicious anger, or anger where I feel that I'm going to be in violent conflict. Like, where I may have to
defend yourself.
defend myself or defend other people or my, as we've talked about in previous things, my pacifism and my instinct. You know, how those two things are going to line up. So other people's anger is frightening to me.
And I'm afraid of other people's anxiety, I would say.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I think one of the things that for a long time, just to talk about morally, like, on the surface level, is that I grew up in the age of pirating software. So, like, back when I owned a Commodore 64 in the late 80s, the way we would pirate is that someone would bring a floppy disk, which was this big black disk, and they would have a ton of games on it, and you would pass it around, and they were all games you could go buy at the store.
Right.
And you would get them every month. Like, it was a whole, kind of little underground ring. It wasn't just at my school, it was, like, everywhere. And you would go to clubs to do this. I mean, it was pretty organized. And then once the internet came, and then you learned to copy discs, and you learned to really even pirate it, I kind of had in my mind, like, well, this is fine because, these huge software companies are just making money hand over fist on us. And, like, we need this technology to run our lives. And, computers are so expensive. And, so I just had all these justifications that when it came to a church and how we were going to get our software.
Yeah, you were Robin Hood.
I had to think about that all of a sudden in a way that I don't know why all of a sudden now I'm working at God's place. We got to think about this, but not when I'm not working there. We could talk about the hypocrisy of all that. But it did force me, as a young man to decide that I'd have to go without. Our church would have to go without. Because we couldn't afford it, and we weren't going to copy it. And that was, took a while for me to come to.
Yeah.
But so there's a moral dilemma that I've wrestled with for a long time.
Yeah. And it's funny because, Eric once mentioned, like, lying, and I've definitely, I fil like it's not quite...
Oh, you just outed me. Thank you.
Oh, well, my point was not to do that, but now you mentioned it. Yeah, Eric's a liar. But I've noticed in myself, and I've gotten a lot better at this, but I'll still want to do it, so it's still there. But I want to lie to look competent about something. So if I used to, like, just very blatantly when I was younger, somebody would be like, "Have you seen this movie?" And I grew up without a TV, and which not because of, like, religious conviction, but we just couldn't afford one. And so there are all these, like, great 80s movies. Like, I've never seen The Terminators, never seen a whole bunch of stuff, right? That people be like, "Oh, Terminator 2?" And I would just be like, yeah, no, I don't know anything about it. I've never seen it. And then that'll, like, bleed into all sorts of other areas. So say, like, I'm with a bunch of competent pastors, which I'm about to do, because I'm about to go to this meeting in Phoenix with some pastors today. And, like, groups like that where everybody's like, "Oh, this book, and
systematic theology."
Yeah, the biblical theology, or the systematic theology, and you've obviously read, J.R. Bazizi's, that's not real.
Right, you were kind of throwing that down last week. Too.
Yeah, see, right, exactly.
We do, yeah.
But I don't think I actually lied about any of them.
No, you didn't lie.
Yeah. But I'm very tempted when somebody will say, like, in this book, and I'll tend to just, instead of going like, actually, I've never read that,
right.
I'll just say, like, "Oh, yeah. And it's like, what is that about? Like, why do I want to act like I know everything that all these people know? Like, why not just, like, kind of raise my hand
vulnerable.
as a pastor and go, I actually have never read that book. Like, can you guys tell me about it?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like why do I?
Wow, because man, got to be competent, can't be
Gotta be
vulnerable,
competent.
and it can't be seen as no.
Right.
And I had the similar problem, and then I turned it all the way the other direction, and to be contemptuous.
Yeah.
So when somebody says, "Oh, I read blah blah blah," and I'm like, "Well, I don't really read that. I only kind of read N.T. Wright and Walter Brueggemann."
Yeah, you've done that a lot on the podcast.
Yeah, I did too. Right? Because I need to prove that, like, well, I'm better than you because I've read
Right.
people I know you haven't read or fought through. So there,
Right.
fine. Or you don't like.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So it's not any better, and it's we can start listing our moral failings pretty aggressively.
Well, and isn't that the interesting thing? Is like I mean, this is the goofy stuff. Is you'll be in some form of church community, and there'll be, you know, you're in an immature church when they're pointing around to, or immature community, I should say, in general, when they're pointing around to just all of the big obvious flaws of people and going like, unbelievable, look at these people, you know, all the terrible things they do. Like, because, and the reason that's a problem is because if you really know yourself and if you really know your heart, the better you get, you know, I expect when I'm 50, I expect to, if you were to ask me this question, to have way more stuff, and it'd be the kind of stuff that people listening would, you know, some of them would be like, that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal at all. But I'd be like, no. It's a huge deal. This is underneath everything I do. Like when I get angry, it's because of this, because I don't feel competent and all that, you know, and
Right.
and when I, you know, when I'm like, say something really unkind to my wife, or when I, you know, like ignore a friend or whatever, like those things come from this other stuff. And, you know, you just go deeper and deeper, and you start realizing these things that seem so small are actually really, really, really big.
Right, and hopefully the only difference is you're learning with age to tap into the gospel in a deeper and more rich way. That's
and not be crushed by all your flaws,
Yeah.
but to have more and more hope and feel more and more loved by God because in all of your flaws, Christ died for you, right?
Yeah, no, that's powerful.
We
Good
just-
question.
Oh, thank you. I don't even remember what it was. So, no, I was curious. What is the most profound spiritual experience you'd say that you've had?
Do you want to go first on that, or
No.
I can go.
The most profound. I need to think for a minute.
All right.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I grew up in the church. I became a Christian when I was 3 or 4. And so one of the experiences that I had as I got older, living kind of in two worlds, one in the church world and one in, you know, the public world where most of my friends didn't know Jesus, is that I found a huge disconnect, both in my own soul in the community of God and then in my friends. Like there was this weird stretching. And I wasn't finding the answers. Like I wasn't finding people wrestling with God. And in early 1999, I was just searching on the web, and I found this conference that was going to happen in Seattle. It was called the Young Leaders Conference, and it was $65. All you had to do was get to Seattle, and I found round trip tickets for my wife and I for $99 a piece. I remember that. So we fly into Seattle, and I remember we walk into this at SPEW, which is the Christian college there. They call it SPEW. Anyway, I walk into their big chapel, and the band is playing. And from the moment I'd never heard the song is called "Mercy Stands." We sing it at our church now, but I started weeping, and my wife started weeping. And from that moment until the end of that conference, 3 days later, most of it was built in crying, and it was such a crazy experience because it felt like all of a sudden those two worlds like came together, and God said, "There's hope. Like I've given you a gift. Like this is not just for your friends. That the gospel's not just for your friends. It's for you. And there's a language that you can understand it in." And that was just like it was transforming, and my eyes were just open to like such a broad range of people, and all through this conference, these older men who now actually people all know would stand up and say, everything has gone wrong. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And here's how Jesus has shown up in that. And it was just really powerful because it was not your typical, here's how you do your church conference. Right. And so it was just such a bunch of broken people, like, offering their brokenness and a lot of creativity being poured out in the midst of it. And that was probably where I tasted, like, an inspiration for my calling and hearing God speak loudly into what I would be doing for the next 20 years.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I've got stuff like a little bit of stuff like that, like with what I should do in ministry. Like there was when I was 17 years old, I was 18 years old. Went to a conference with a youth group, so I had just kind of graduated the youth group, and I went to help, and there was a African American pastor who was talking about like the fact that some people were called to give God, their career, and kind of all their time and really focus on building up the body of Christ. And for some reason, like all the people I knew who were there, none of them, that didn't really, I'm sure they don't even remember it. They weren't really impacted by that. But for me, there's this like, that's what's going on. Like, that's what I'm feeling inside. So I went home to my church and told them that I wanted a job, which is really a weird thing to do when you're 18. And they actually gave me one, which was kind of like I did all the random stuff around the church, like cut the grass and, sort through the attendance cards and all sorts of really mediocre. But actually, I kind of liked it and enjoyed it and felt like I was doing it with and for God. So that was important. Then, I don't know, a few years ago, I went and heard a pastor that I really enjoy spoke at a church planning conference, and some of the stuff he was saying just really clicked, really made sense. And he was talking about how much you need to like love the community in which you're a pastor. And I was really wrestling. This is before starting the church that's now become Mission Church, like just before it. And I was doing an internship somewhere, and I couldn't quite figure out why I didn't click with that internship and why, like, it was a good thing, but I just didn't feel like I should be there long term, and I couldn't figure it out. And he just, in really like clear terms, talked about why he ended up pastor in Santa Fe, which is, and he was like in some rural church before that. And something about that, when he explained all that, it just clicked. Like sometimes, like I feel the same way. It makes a lot of sense to me. But then there was stuff like when I was about 17, when I really I'd known about Jesus also since I was about 3. When I was 17, it's like this became a critical thing for me to believe and put my trust in. And I don't think that's like when I became a Christian. It just seems like God had been at work, and this was like a critical point to me. I don't know. I could go on and on.
That's awesome. So, we appreciate you both sharing that. The next question is kind of a two-part question. What is something that... are we short on time?
No, we're good.
Okay. What is something about yourselves that you have learned that is very particular due to your upbringing and your experience that you don't think someone would have been able to teach you and it resonate as well?
Yeah.
And what is something on the opposite of that like you don't think experience would have taught you, or you're thankful you didn't have to experience it, but someone was able to share it with you and you were able to resonate with it?
I'll let you go first in that one.
Okay. Well, there's this unique piece of my story in that I grew up fairly poor, trailer parks, but I also went to private school. So I've always felt like I wasn't in one of those worlds or the other. I was always kind of in between, and I think that's a unique perspective that I have. Like I feel very comfortable in a corporate board meeting. I feel very comfortable in a slum. Either way, I kind of know what to do in a weird way. So I think that's uniquely prepared me even for our church and some of the things I feel like God's called me specifically to do and to bring people together in a certain way. So that's one piece.
It's a good piece.
Yeah. Thanks.
Of course.
What was the other part of that question?
The other part of it is not necessarily experience, but you're thankful that someone else has shared with you that you've been able to resonate with that you didn't have to experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just I guess one thing would be like substance abuse and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. It was a weird thing. Like, I grew up in high school. Like, I was at all kinds of parties and doing it all sorts of places. But for whatever reason, like, I never became the guy that, had to drink too much or had to smoke something to feel better or whatever. But I knew a lot of people that did and cared about those folks and never thought they were garbage for doing it or whatever. But that just hasn't been my particular, at least so far. I'm 34, not planning on it, but that was never something that like had a hold of me. But I knew people to whom that was the case and saw what that could do. I don't know. That's one thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I would say growing up with my mother and father is a unique experience. I mean, I know growing up with anybody's experience is unique, but mine are highly connected, ministry-oriented people, so I got a lot of training. I just wouldn't have gotten. Even if I went to a seminary, I wouldn't have gotten that training because it started when I was 5, and they were very intentional about it. And I rebelled against a lot of it, but it shaped who I was and how I understand things. The other thing, though, in my upbringing is that I got picked on a lot as I was growing up. But as I got older, I learned from some friends some martial arts. And I also started working in a hospital where I was the main guy to take people down. So I ended up being in fights as I got older. And so that actually created like a way of being as a pastor that gives me a little bit of, like, I can be with rough people, which I couldn't used to be. Like, I was terrified of them because they picked on me all the time.
Oh, right.
So that was, I think, something that was added, like, given to me that I just wouldn't get going to school or something like that. I think the other, like, things that people have offered me is, like, being a pastor, and Andy can resonate with this, or it's probably the same experience. We just hear a lot of stories and learn a lot about how people interact with trauma. But there is no way I want to go through that. But I am learning how people respond to it and how they understand it. And it's really helpful to me in helping other people. So they've taught me a lot that way, that there's just no way I'm going to walk through any of that.
Yeah.
I don't want to walk through any of it anyway.
I'll give a round 2 to that question. Maybe Eric can do another round 2 or something. But I had a really really unique friend group in high school. It was kind of like the, I don't know, somewhere between like the car guys / hip hop guys. Like my friends would be breakdancing in the middle of school, and not so much me.
I used to break dance.
Goof off. Yeah.
My cardboard, piece of cardboard.
Yeah, cardboard and linoleum and all that. And so, like that was my friend group. A lot of hip hop shows when I was younger, and hopefully this year as well. I still enjoy that stuff, but I think I look back on a lot of folks' experience, and I had a really diverse group of friends, and I think that shaped me a lot, and really grateful for it. And and then another thing I think about often is like even like sexual stuff. Like I remember when I was in middle school, I was with a friend of mine whose parents had gone through a divorce and life was pretty crazy, and he had a friend, this girl, and I ended up learning like she wanted to have a physical relationship with me, and she offered that. And I was like, oh no, I don't think so. But I think about that, like I look back on it and I go, man, like so many middle school kids like would have been intrigued and gone for that, and like who would I be if I'd started, like if my sexual activity had begun in middle school? Like that would have changed the whole trajectory of my life, I have no doubt. And it wasn't just like, oh, it could have happened. Like it was like there was opportunity, there was all that. And I just think about that and I think like, God, you didn't shelter everybody from this, why'd you shelter me from it? You not just shelter, but like you gave me this conviction that was like outside of myself. Like that wasn't like I sat there and just thought through all the pros and cons, There's something I just was like, oh, I can't do that. So that's, I don't know, I think about that sometimes, like that, yeah, just what would have been different, who knows? But I feel like God was protecting me, and I know that's supposed to be part of a lot of people's stories and but for whatever reason, for me it was not, and I just think about it. So.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to add.
No, I'm good.
Nice. So, I was curious, what is something that you have learned from one another that you wish to actually just share? What is something that you learned?
What have I learned from
Andy, and what have you learned
what has Andy learned from me?
That you really
I could say that. I noticed that I have this is not what I learned from Andy, but I noticed as I listen to me speak or on the podcast or anytime I'll say, well, I have two things, and then I'm like, where's the second thing? Like Eric, I'm really like Solomon. I understand. I've got 7 things, but I'm going to tell you 6 of them. But the first thing I think I've learned from Andy, and actually Andy and I haven't really known each other like in a way that's more intimate than recently. Like what would you say, like the last year maybe? Yeah,
probably about the last year.
Yeah, we've actually gotten to know each other. But the thing that I really like about Andy and that's inspiring to me is that and I resonate with it, is that I know you won't say you have this, but you're a very courageous person. And I love the way that you and it's more in the moment. Like you are very much like, oh, I'm going to go talk to that person. Oh, I'm going to think, like you act on what you're thinking about. It's not, if you say it, then it's probably going to happen. And even if it's kind of scary, you're going to go do that thing. Like you're willing to take a risk. And that, like, is inspiring to me. I really think that's cool. And the other thing I really enjoy, and I don't know if these are things that I've learned, quote unquote, because neither of us have been in a spot where we're like teaching directly, but I have learned in the sense of, or I resonate with your loyalty, that you're to God, to the people around you, to the mission. Like you are about this. This city and your church and the people with whom you love, like there isn't a lot else about you, you have your business, you have like, but it's not like you're like, you don't sit around and chat about a whole plethora of other things because you know what you love and you know what you're about. And in some ways you don't have time for 500 other things.
That's part of it.
So, because you have your love.
Yeah.
So that's...
And that's kind of answers my second question. If you want to expand or just add something, my next question was, and I still want you to answer the first question, but what is something that you see in one another that you wish that other people would recognize because they would really benefit from it? So like loyalty or something like that.
Well, I would say all of those qualities.
Yes, definitely.
I'm going to have to think about like how to say that.
Okay. And you go on to tell?
Yeah, years ago, I think the first time I ever met Eric was at a men's conference.
Oh man, that was painful.
Well, and that's exactly, it was painful. And Eric was sharing some of the stuff that is and has become really key to the village, to the church, and he was sharing that with these other men. And you're not like a conference speaker guy. This is out of your comfort zone.
It was way out at that time. In particular, it was super. I didn't even want to do it.
Yeah. And so, Eric doesn't want to do it. His dad's there. Then there's like essentially like a ministry leader heckler.
Yes.
In the group, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's one of our listeners. And hey, man, it's cool. It was years ago. We can talk. But he, just like would not let Eric do his thing. He was just always interrupting and disagreeing with stuff and challenging everything. Yeah. And I remember I was just sitting there going, this poor guy, with Eric. But at the same time, like two things came away. Like I walked away with two things. Like one was, of all the things I'd heard at the conference, what Eric was saying was some of the deepest and most thoughtful, like how to really deeply engage. So I remember the table of decision, right? From that conference. I don't remember anything else, literally nothing else from that conference at all, including what I talked about, because I talked about something.
I didn't know you spoke at the conference.
I did something. I don't remember what it was. Like I don't have the foggiest idea.
That's funny.
But I remember the table of decision. I never forgot it. And so that was like, I just thought this guy has a lot of wisdom and insight, and I want to hear more. It was something that I came away with. So what would I want other people to, like, Eric's not the type who's going to like bang down the door and like, here's me and all my thoughts, but his thoughts are really, really well thought out, and there's wisdom. And so I would want people to know that and to listen to him. And then I just observing like his willingness, like right here in the class, like he's having to do what he's teaching, because like he's talking to like the table of decisions. There's this idea that like the enemy is saying things to you about who you are and what, and then Jesus is inviting you into a different way. And here's this guy challenging Eric and making him feel small and all this stuff, and he's having to like live it out. And I felt like he was patient and gentle with the guy when, like, everything, I wanted to stand up and just say, dude, shut up. Like, that's where I was at. And Eric just, okay, all right, thanks, okay, back to what I was saying. So I was impressed. Thought you were willing to do what you were asking people to do.
That's cool.
Awesome. Now we probably reached our
max. Oh, what do you?
Well, I wanted to make sure that you didn't have anything to add. Can I close out with one more thing?
Sure.
Awesome. What if you had actually, I'm going to do something different. If you had the opportunity to share with this next generation, what would you want them to know? What do you think that's really important for them to know that you don't believe that they're getting, or that you believe, like, it's not necessarily that they're not getting, but something that your generation really held dear that you believe is important?
That's a long, complicated question to end with, but I'll make it real short. Is I think that it's not what my generation got, but it is the thing that I think the gospel tells us, and in a very gentle way. It's not about you; it's about God, and it's about loving your neighbor. And I think that is, and to go just back to your other question, that's what I love about Andy. Like, that's what we resonate on, because there's tons of stuff he and I philosophically don't agree on, but like that I don't think there's any, like, we understand what it, like, we resonate on those things, and I think that's why we're here doing this podcast together.
Yeah. Similarly, I'm not like looking at my well, we don't even know what my generation is.
We don't. He and I don't even agree on whose generation is doing what. So
there's that. Yeah, I just think like the thing that's going to continue to be important is just the gospel really is the key. I mean, I think it's something that I would go back and say to the people I went to church with who didn't get it and didn't see that and didn't teach it to me, and I would say forward to all of you is that like in the gospel, love and justice kiss. Like we have grounds for calling things wrong that are wrong in ourselves and in others, but at the same time we have grounds for being absolutely accepted through the cross, through the death of Jesus Christ. And there's just nothing else like that in the world that offers those two things in perfect harmony. And just don't ever let anything else control your ideology other than that.
Yep.
Awesome. And I know how big of a question that was, and I really appreciate you both answering it in the way that you did. And I think that's all you really need to share.
All right.
And hopefully we'll talk more about it too. Thank you so much for... I'm losing my voice. There you go. Cleared it up a little bit. This has been the host, Bryan Betz, Pastor Andy Littleton, Pastor Eric Siepen. Thank you so much for joining us for Faith Over Breakfast. Have a wonderful day.